The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, good morning. This is Erin Dean with Early Learning Division. Thanks for joining our webinar this morning. We're going to be talking about working with your advisory committee, and then I have a whole list of updates we're going to talk through, and I appreciate your willingness and flexibility with a quick change in the format for our webinar today. I apologize for that. And part of our conversation today will be sharing struggles and successes in working with your advisory committee. So I'm hoping that we'll have some participation from all of you. I can unmute you. You can raise your hand, or you can type in questions. I'm flying solo today. We had a mix-up when we originally scheduled these, and with a calendar, and Danielle is on a site visit today. So I will be doing the webinar as well as managing the questions, which can sometimes be a little tricky. So I will thank you ahead of time for your patience with me as we go through this. So we had a request from many of you to have some conversation and some tips and some just networking and sharing ideas of working with your advisory committee. So we're going to start by walking through what the actual Healthy Families America best practice standards say about your advisory committee, and that way kind of our conversation can be grounded in what the standards say. We're going to share some frustrations and some struggles, and then share some successes, and then I'm going to walk you through some resources that are available to you after this webinar that you can use if you're seeking some additional information and guidance. So we'll just jump right in here. So this is the definition in the best practice standards. It's in section GA1, which is governance and administration. It's in the back of the best practice standards. The definition says that your advisory group is an organized voluntary group with responsibilities to advise on the planning, implementation, and evaluation of your HFA site operations. The functions and responsibilities of this group may include making recommendations to the HFA site and the organization's governing group, if different from the advisory group, specifically regarding site policy, operations, finances, community needs, etc. The advisory group members are a diverse group of individuals who represent the interests of the community as guided by the critical elements. So the next couple sections that we're going to walk through, you'll see that this definition is broken out into GA1A, B, and C. It is important to note in here where it says that the organization's governing group could be different than the advisory group. So many of your programs are within a larger nonprofit that may have a kind of a board of directors, or some other group that governs that entire nonprofit or that entire agency. It could be, if you're within a county, it could be county commissioners, or it could be a whole slew of different group of people, and that might be different than your advisory group. Most times those boards don't have the capacity to also give the needed attention to the Healthy Families program. And so it's, I suppose in some areas that might be something they make room for, because often those people can be some of the same people on all the same committees. But generally, those governing boards aren't going to have the capacity to take on advising for this group as well. So it could be that your advisory group needs to answer to or advise that governing group, or they could operate separately. It can look different in different areas. Please go ahead and type in the questions or raise your hand, and I can unmute you if you have questions as I'm going through here. Again, I'm going to try and look at both the question section and be walking through the slides as we're going. So GA1 says the site has an advisory governing group which serves in an advisory or governing capacity in the planning, implementation, and assessment of site-related activities. So in GA1, the intent, which is the like italicized kind of purple color text in your best practice standards, is pretty lengthy. It's 3 really good sized paragraphs long. And when we go through the standards and we think about what we're required to do, HFA has told us the intent is also something we're held to. So if something is spelled out, not specifically spelled out in the standard, but it is in the intent, we are still held to what's in the intent as well. So you'll find that intent in GA1. I had it in here, but it was very wordy and very long, and it just seemed like a lot to go over here and read through. So you can look that up on your own time. But I wanted to break out the 3 different areas. So planning, implementation, and then assessment of site activities. So you can use your advisory group to help you in planning various things for your HFA program. So this can include screening, enrollment, new partnerships in your community, if you're planning a small project, if you're planning any different piece of your HFO program that you're implementing, you can take that to your advisory committee, use their expertise and their knowledge to help guide your decisions around how you're going to implement or the planning phase of any implementation. The next section is that you're going to use your advisory committee for implementation of the HFA program. So this is really focused around what does your policy say and what is your practice? Is your practice and your implementation of the program follow along with your policy? Do you need to make any policy changes? And you can use your advisory committee's expertise and knowledge to help guide what your policy says and how you implement that in practice. And then the last section that they've broken out here is assessment or evaluation of site-related activities. So this is your plans and analyses, reviewing the status report, reviewing other data, performance and outcome indicators, any local data you might track, or any local evaluations that you have going on specifically at your site. That doesn't happen too often, but from time to time, one site might be involved in a separate evaluation, and so use your advisory committee for that as well. And then your advisory committee is also charged with signing off on your program policy and procedure manual, your program goal plan, and then all of your 2-year plans and analyses. You can absolutely take other plans and analyses to your advisory committee if you meet more frequently and you have time on your agendas to do that, and you want to utilize their expertise in that way. Taking your screening plan analyses, home visit completion, those other things you can take to them for input. You don't need them to sign off on them to submit them, though. I'm going to pause real quick and see if there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any, so I will move on. So GA1A says the site's advisory governing group meets at least quarterly and is an effectively organized active body advising, governing the functions specified in GA1. So it is required that your group meet at least quarterly. I know that can be really tricky when you have certain plans and analyses that need to be done in certain months and approved before you submit them. There's a handful of sites where their advisory group meets every other month, and that can make it a little bit easier. That adds 2 extra meetings a year. But that can be hard. I know for some programs, your advisory group is also maybe the early childhood committee or hub governing committee or some other early childhood group within your community. And you might not have the ability to say, hey, can we meet more often? Or can we have a longer meeting? Or you can probably suggest that. It might not be within your control to make that decision, though. For sure, if that is the situation, though, where your advisory group is also part of a larger committee, you should be involved in the planning of those meetings, and you should have a voice in some of that that process of how those meetings are ran and how often, and be involved in that piece of it. So, so the requirement is quarterly, can be beneficial to do it more often. And, you know, like for our state advisory, it is also, our state advisory is the Best Beginnings Early Childhood Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Early Learning Council. And I really have to, sometimes I have to be, really use my voice to be heard, that it's important for us to have additional time on this meeting because I'm going to need to review the X, Y, and Z. And so there might be times if your group is part of a larger committee where you really have to say, no, I need more time this month or this meeting. And then you're going to want to probably, you're going to want to break out those committee notes specific to the notes around your Healthy Families discussions. Because during accreditation, reviewers want to see how often those meetings are happening, and specifically if it's a larger committee, where the focus was around healthy families. Okay. GA1B breaks out that definition a little bit farther. It says advisory governing group has a wide range of needed skills and abilities and includes representatives from a heterogeneous mix in terms of skills, strengths, community knowledge, professions, and cultural diversity, allowing it to effectively serve the interests of the community and advocate on behalf of the diversity of the site participants. Really what this is getting at is when you look at your roster of committee members, is it a diverse group of people in terms of knowledge, skill, diversity? Does your group represent the various cultures within your community that you're serving? If you serve a lot of Spanish-speaking families, do you have someone on your committee, or more than one person, preferably on your committee, that also speaks Spanish and is from a Latino community? So that's just one example. So really, do you have a parent voice on your advisory committee? If you serve a lot of teen parents, do you have a teen parent on your advisory committee? So really looking at who you're serving, and it is a representation from those groups on your advisory committee. And then a large, diverse range of skills and strengths and community knowledge. So really capturing that. As far as how you have that documented, most people have a roster and have a column for, professional experience or where this person fits to your group. If you want examples of how to structure that, I can provide those. I'm going to pause and make sure there's no questions. Okay. And then the last section of GA1 is GA1C. It's the site manager or other site representative. Typically, this will be the program manager or program manager assistant. And the advisory governing group work as an effective team with information, coordination, staffing, and assistance provided by the site manager. So you'll most likely you should have an advisory chair, and this person will kind of guide your meetings and facilitate the meetings. But as the program manager, you're going to be providing most of the information, the agendas, you or someone with you, also writing up notes from the meeting, any follow-up, you're going to be staffing that committee. But you should be working really effectively with your committee, with your advisory chair or potentially a vice chair to really kind of guide those meetings. That can be difficult sometimes. Okay. So I chose kind of an emoji theme. You'll see in the next couple of slides. I didn't know this actually had action to it, so that's kind of funny. My kids are really into emojis right now, so I was inspired by them. So I thought maybe we'd start with kind of your biggest challenges when working with your advisory committee. This can be anything from getting people to just show up, to active participation, to people following through with their action items, things they said they would do in a meeting. So I thought we would just start with that. I'm going to go over to the audience view where I can see what if you guys are raising your hands at all, and I can unmute you if you'd like to share some experience you had with something challenging. Maybe you can share a challenge and then how you worked towards remedying that, or maybe it's a current challenge you're working with right now and you'd like to put it out there and others that are on the webinar can share some thoughts on it or ideas, or maybe they've dealt with the same thing. And we can kind of just walk through some challenges that you all have experienced. And I am not seeing any hands raised. I know you all have questions or have things to share because this was a topic that was requested that we cover. So while I wait for someone who wants to share, I can share. Oh, wait, there's a question. Maybe. Yes. Okay, so there's a couple great questions coming in. So I am going to, I'll read the question, and then if others want to share their input, I can unmute you. Or I wonder if I can unmute everyone, how much feedback it would be. Let's hold on a second and see. Okay, never mind. That's a lot of feedback. Okay, I'm going to read the first question, and then if you would like to add how you've dealt with this, then you can raise your hand and I will unmute you one at a time. So Sarah is asking, we have some program alumni, so past participants who've joined the advisory committee, which is fantastic, great job. And how do other programs make these members feel comfortable to share in the group? So if you have past participants on your advisory group and you have worked really hard to make sure they feel comfortable to share their thoughts and opinions and not feel judged within that group, and raise your hand and I will unmute you. If you don't know how to raise your hand on the little side pane, there's a little 5-fingered hand that's up. You just press that and that lets me know that you want to say something. Or you might be able to unmute yourself. I'm not sure if that's an option. Well, while we wait for someone else who might want to share their experience, I can say from my experience having staffed an advisory group when I was in Clackamas County, we had a parent participants kind of on and off, and it can be kind of tricky. You really have to kind of rethink as a group some of the how you talk about outcomes, how you talk about services to families, to make sure that that parents feel feel like they're not being judged in any way in that meeting. And then 2, it can be really intimidating for a parent to come into a meeting full of professionals who are sitting around talking about this program that they went through. So really, I feel like the strategies that I used to help parents feel really welcome was specifically maybe the first couple meetings, talking to them ahead of time, finding out from them if they were feeling nervous, if they weren't, checking in with them after the meeting around how they're feeling, specifically calling on them and not just saying, hey, can you share your thoughts, but really calling out where they would have expertise in this area. As a mom who's been through this program, what did it feel like when XYZ happened? Or really kind of giving clear examples of what I was looking for input on and giving them a clear venue or avenue for sharing their opinion. Because it can be intimidating to just kind of raise your hand and throw your opinion into the mix. But having someone kind of call out that you have this specific expertise because you are unique in this group and went through the program, I feel like helped them give themselves permission to share their experience. I'd love to hear from any other programs, any other program managers that want to share how they've kind of helped past participants who are on the advisory group feel comfortable and welcomed. Okay, well, if you think of some strategies you've used and you want to share those later on, feel free to email Sarah in Lane County or post it on the Basecamp board as well. The next two questions are somewhat related. One is, I struggle with active participation from my group. And the next is, engagement is always an issue. So those are kind of two different things, or two similar things, having your advisory group engaged in actively participating. Kara from Yamhill said, one of the things I did was to rebrand it as a program development team. Kara, I'm going to unmute you, and I would love it if you could expand on that a little bit and tell us more about that.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Great.
Okay, excellent. No, so I had really been struggling with engagement on my program advisory council, and I think that they had that sense, and this may have been happening inadvertently, but that they were rubber stamping things that we had already decided. And so so one of the things I did was we rebranded it as this program development team, and then we had a retreat to kind of kick off the rebrand. I also, so I think I did a 4-hour, it's not a long retreat, like a 4-hour half-day retreat. I served them dinner, and then I did launch with like, here's 3 strategic initiatives for this group, and we did family engagement, quality assurance, and staff development. And so that gave us like these 3 circles of bodies of work that we were going to be targeting at each of our meetings, and then that kind of gave some meaning to all of the reports and the things that we're deciding. We have groups that are looking specifically, and they could choose an area of strength for them or what their professional or personal background lended itself. So, when we're looking at family engagement, they're brainstorming what are ideas around all of our family engagement efforts, and then we were able to down the road map those ideas to when we had our screening assessments, or when we were looking at our entry and exits, and how are we keeping families engaged, and how are we reaching out. So I think that I did have some turnover in that time, and I strategically incorporated people who weren't involved in a lot of other things, and like someone else said, some past parents, to really help inform the work that we are doing. And so I think giving that group the opportunity to feel like they're not just showing up to listen to me talk, but hey, we're going to dive into this together. It's not perfect, and it's still that group. I have 15 people involved in that. And I've had a designated note taker, which is a helpful management of something that's an area of non-strength for Kara. So that giving her the opportunity of like, hey, this would be very helpful for this group. Can you help us circle back? And giving people just some ownership of some of the things that they've done. So some of the fun things that they got to do, they redesigned a staff room for me. Someone painted it. They got a couch. They did some just some fun things to help care for the staff. So we're talking about staff development. They're helping out with some of our just observations, and some of them have a background in program management. So those people are looking at helping me look at the data, and then, you know, talking through some of the data before I write it up so that they can have some ownership. So I think that was key, was one, to give people ownership of some things, and the time to be creative and be a participant in the process and not just hear the reports. So it seems to have worked a little bit better, and I'm still working on getting the right people sitting at the table who both have time and meet some of those GA guidelines around who needs to be sitting around the table. So I feel like that's what is a balance for me, of getting people who want to sit around the table and engaging them, and also having the people who have time to really invest in a program that I care a lot about.
Kara, thank you so much for sharing. There's so many things you said in there that I really, really appreciate and love. And I think one of the things that stood out for me of what you just talked through is no one wants to spend their time coming to a committee meeting where they listen to someone else, just update them and debrief them on everything, and then they sign off and say, yeah, okay. It doesn't feel like a good use of time. I sit on a handful of committees, and there is a dramatic difference on how some committees are run. And nothing is more annoying than sitting in a meeting when you feel like the decision was already made before you even sat down. And right. They're just there to follow a process and get you to sign off on something and be done with it. So if that is an approach that has been used in any of the advisory committees, that might, if you're having a lot of high turnover, that might be why. If someone feels like this isn't a good use of my time, my expertise isn't really being used here, it could make it not a meeting that people really feel invested in. But when they feel like their input is really being helpful in the development of this program and the improvement and ongoing kind of sustainability of the program, I imagine that is more motivation to show up and actively participate. And I love what you said there, Kara. That's really great. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, I will put you back on mute unless you have more to share later.
Nope, okay.
Okay. Okay. Another question that came through is, what are some strategies to support our committee members in giving more meaningful feedback as opposed to only giving grammatical type edits? Oh man, those people on your committee who want to just like wordsmith and fix little teeny tiny typos rather than give like substantial feedback can be so frustrating. And so this, I think, is a really valid frustration with advisory committees. And I think a lot of what Kara just spoke to can really speak to this around how you structure your meetings. I love the idea of doing a mini little retreat, even if it's half day, to really kind of frame up the work you hope to tackle. And then in the coming, months, maybe it's a plan for the next year or 2 years or maybe less. And just kind of helping your advisory committee really focus, like, here are the main buckets of work we're gonna focus on over the next number of months. And sometimes, I know this might sound harsh, but sometimes you just have to say to people, and I've said this in our Best Beginnings meeting, I am not looking for grammatical error. Like for someone to check my grammar here, and I'm not looking for typo checks. I am looking for you to read the content and tell me if you feel like this gets at what we discussed, or if this really gets to summarizes what we talked about having in this plan. And that's hard for some people because maybe people feel like they don't have more substantive feedback to give, or maybe they are so focused on grammar that they can't get past that or something. Because really, realistically, half the time, or probably more than half the time, what is written is just fine. It's just a preference and how someone else might say it differently, and that can actually be more frustrating. If people have struggled with this as well, have other people on their advisory committee who really just focus on grammatical type edits, and they have successfully maneuvered that, I would love for you to type in or raise your hand and share some strategies or what you have done with your group. I know this is a little difficult over a webinar format when not everyone is, when it's a bit easier when we can see faces and it feels a little bit more like a conversation. So I appreciate if you're willing to share. Okay, well, seeing no hands raised for this one, if you have dealt with this and you would like to share your strategies or your approach in a less, and not in a webinar type format, and you want to share your thoughts, this is Beth Kersons in Clackamas asking this question. You can email her directly or send it to me and I can pass it along. You can also post it on Basecamp as well. And I will move on to the next question. This is from Carlos in Douglas, Klamath, and Lake. We are a 3-county region, long distance. Yep, Douglas, Klamath, and Lake is a very geographically large area. We are a 3-county region, and we are struggling with a way for communication among sites. GoToMeeting is not working. Any other ideas for low to no cost platforms? I love the idea of holding a day retreat, but the travel is an issue. So I think Carlos is getting at here, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have members on your advisory committee from all 3 counties, and like asking them to travel multiple hours to meet on a regular basis is proving difficult, and GoToMeeting options, just like this one, can be difficult to get group participation when you're not all sitting down around a table together. So this is not something I have a ton of experience with. When I was a program manager, it was a 1-county program and I didn't have to deal with this. So I would love some input from other regional programs. You know, we have Eastern Oregon with Baker, Wallowa, Malheur, and we have Blue Mountain with Morrow, Umatilla, and Union counties. We have High Desert with Deschutes, Jefferson, and Crook. So, and I know there's more than that. Four Rivers. Oh, I see Lori's hand. Lori, I'm going to unmute you. Let's see if this works.
Oh no.
Hey, Lori.
I just wanted to add to that initially that was my goal, was to get all 3 counties represented, and they just slowly, the smaller counties have just kind of slowly backed out for one reason or another. But what I've gotten were regional people who serve all 3 counties, like early intervention. I'm trying to think of other people, and also the contractors from the other 2 counties, the health department directors of the health department, so they're from the other counties. But that one's a little difficult. So you can meet me again.
No, that's a good strategy to, if you're unable to find people specifically from those areas, to find other people closer, but that represent all of the areas. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Next, I'm gonna go to Sunday Campy. Hey, Sunday. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so we're just fighting the same battle. In all honesty, it's really hard to get 3 county representation and when there's such a large distance. But one of the strategies that Stacy and I just came up with is that we are going to offer the Zoom format, but we're going to offer it in one central location. So we will have one here at St. Helens Community Action, one in Astoria's Community Action team, and then one in Tillamook's Care. So the group is coming to one location in each community. So they're watching it together, they're interacting together. So we're hoping that we'll get better representation, that there's still a community feeling, a group feeling, but still offer that Zoom type meeting.
Sunday, that's such a great idea. It gives people, like you said, the feeling, that community feeling, they're together, they're with other people, they're not sitting in their office on a go-to meeting type thing, and probably also provides some great opportunity for little breakout discussions as well, specific to maybe that county or that community, and then coming back together and sharing ideas too. That's great.
How it goes. So we're crossing our fingers it's going to work.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. Okay, I am going to move to Teresa and Grant Harney, our Frontier program. Hey, Teresa, can you hear me? You are unmuted, but I cannot hear you. Teresa, maybe if you want to type in your comment, I will be able to read it that way because I can't hear you. And we did have one other comment that was in regards to this large geographic area advisory committee question from Karen in Four Rivers, which is Hood River, Wasco, Sherman, Wheeler, and Gillum counties. And she says, we are a 5-county region with a board that advises the Early Learning Hub and some other programs as well. We meet every other month and rotate our meeting locations around the region. This way the travel burden is shared. So that's another strategy, is having your meetings in various locations. So maybe you start in one county, go to the next, and kind of rotate that way. So Teresa typed in, my strategy was to select an existing board and have them adopt our program and serve as our advisory board. So you went to an already pre-existing board and asked them to take on the function of advising healthy families as well. Yeah, that's a great strategy as well. You know, you have people who are already coming together for another meeting, and they're often can be kind of the same people who are at all of these meetings. And so I think a number of programs have shifted to doing that, where you're adding the advisory function for healthy families onto an existing committee. The tricky part in that is making sure that they fully understand the time commitment. So some parts of the year, your meetings might be less content heavy, and you're not going to have as much to discuss. And in times where you're looking at different plans and analyses or the policy manual, you're going to have need much more time on those committee meetings. So Teresa also added to that. My first choice was the Early Learning Hub. Great due to cross-county representatives and sectors, but the group had trouble meeting due to distance. So switched to early intervention and needed to educate them on healthy families, and the members were not quite as invested. So that's kind of a struggle when you add on to a group that's very specific in what they're already discussing and working towards. Are there any other comments on those that question specific to working with an advisory group that geographically is very spread out? Are there any other challenges that you guys would like to share or talk through or get other recommendations from other programs? Okay. Well, we are gonna, the next slide we're gonna move to then is sharing some successes. So we've kind of already heard some, which is great. So we heard from Kara about doing a retreat. Love that idea. And how restructuring and reframing that committee really helped with some buy-in and getting some real substantial feedback and participation, which is great. We heard from Sunday, who shared that she kind of they're restructuring their Zoom meetings and hoping that increases participation. It sounds like it hopefully will have a positive effect. Heard some other successes. Are there other things that you guys have done with your committee that helped improve something you were struggling with? Maybe maybe your committee used to meet at night and now you meet during the day. Maybe you used to have a hard time getting people to show up, but now people are coming all the time. Or what are some good things that you guys have done with your committee that you feel like others could benefit from hearing? Well, while I wait for some comments to come in, I will share just something that comes to my mind. When I was in Clackamas, we would, most years, we hosted a holiday dinner, like a potluck type style, with our advisory committee and our home visitors and our screeners and our supervisors, so our whole team. And so we would invite them all to come together, and usually one of our advisory committee members would host it at her house. And we would play some fun little games and some get to know you activities and have a potluck dinner. And it was just a nice way to kind of bridge the two. So a group that was advising our program got a chance to really spend some time with our home visitors and our supervisors and our team that was actually implementing the program. And I kind of helped put some names to faces and an opportunity for them to talk with them one-on-one more about their work within the program. Every once in a while, we'd have a home visitor come to our advisory committee meeting too and share on a specific topic, or share on something, like share a story of a family, really help bring the work that they're doing and make it more real and live and right in front of our advisory committee members. So those were nice things that we did that I felt like kind of bridged the relationship between our team and our advisory committee. Are there any other ideas or comments that people want to share? If you don't want to now, you can always email it out to the group. You can put it on Basecamp. You can email it to me and I can share it as well. Okay, seeing no hands raised, I will move on. Okay. So if you would like some more resources, Healthy Families America has a webinar specifically for this titled How to Best Utilize Your HFA Advisory Group. And you can go to the website right here that I have listed at the top of the screen to find that webinar. There's a handful of webinars listed there, so you scroll down about halfway down and you'll find this one. They also have a link to sample advisory group bylaws and then sample advisory group agreements that you can look at. And then I created a folder on Dropbox in the program management folder that is how to best use your advisory committee. I would love for you all to send me samples of different bylaws or any agreements you use, or agendas, or agenda structures, or agenda topics, or if you did a retreat and you have an agenda you'd like to share so that others don't have to recreate the wheel and they can use those as a starting point. I would love to post those samples on there for you all to utilize and share It just seems like we should support each other in that rather than having to everyone start from scratch and start over. So if you have samples or you'd like to share yours, your bylaws, your agreements, your retreat agendas or schedules or whatever, please send them to me and I'd be happy to upload them on Dropbox for everyone to utilize. I'm going to pause for a second and make sure we don't have any questions because this is the last slide on advisory committee. The next couple of slides are a bunch of updates before we wrap up for the day. I'm going to pause real quick. Okay. Whoops. Go back. Okay, so we're going to jump into some, oh, hold on, we got a question. Is there a requirement that our advisory board has bylaws? You know, the standards don't call it out. There's nowhere in the standards that I've read that say you have to have bylaws. A lot of our advisory committees do. It makes it real clear to your advisory committee what is required of them, what the expectations are, what the rules are. If your contract is within a county and the advisory committee technically is ran through that county, typically you would be required by their rules to have bylaws, but it's not spelled out in the standards. But it can be very helpful because your bylaws will say things like how often you meet. If somebody doesn't show up for a meeting for 2 or 3 meetings, then they are considered no longer on the committee. Like, it really lays out those rules so that when you come up to some of those difficult situations, you can go back to the rules and say, well, our bylaws say X, Y, Z, and here's what's happening. So, you know, our decision is that this person's no longer on the committee, or our decision is that, you know, whatever that situation may be, those bylaws can sometimes help you. Okay. I don't see any more questions. So I'm going to move on. So some updates. Many of you, especially if you didn't get a site visit from HFA, are probably wondering where we're at in the reaccreditation process. We are so close. We are almost there. Some of our sites had to submit evidence to panel, to the panel meeting last week. Most of those sites there's enough standards upgraded to pass the threshold for accreditation, which is fantastic. We have 3 sites that are still working on formatting some data around ASQ data collection in a different way. Their spreadsheets were not functioning and we can't figure out why. And so the data is not clear. So we're just transferring their data from one spreadsheet to a different spreadsheet, and then we're going to resubmit that. The good news is that the panel said we feel confident that the HFA staff can internally look at the data and upgrade them if it's clear they're meeting the standards. So that good news is that we don't have to go back to panel in June. We just have to submit it to the HFA staff and they'll review it and they can choose to upgrade those standards for each site. And the reason that we're stuck on that one is because ASQ monitoring and ASQ data is a Sentinel standard. So we got to have that one in before we're accredited. The last piece of accreditation, which I actually accidentally put on a different slide, realizing it probably should have gone here. You all got an email from me probably last week, around updating your data in HFAST. And by data, I don't mean the survey that they put out. I mean your staff profile and staff information. I sent you a spreadsheet that you can look at to see which data is missing specifically for your program. And then you're required to go in, log in, and update that data. HFA will not grant us statewide accreditation until all of that data is up to date. So please go do that if you haven't already. And I need you to send me an email when it's done. I'm tracking those so that I can keep track of who is done. And then once everyone has told me that they're done, I will ask HFA to rerun the report showing that everything is up to date. So if you've not done that, please prioritize that for us so we can get that taken care of. just something we learned in this process around monitoring of ASQs and tracking ASQ data. So while we don't have to use the ASQ spreadsheet anymore for data collection, right? We're using the NPC bubble forms. We still are required to monitor that children are getting 2 ASQs a year. You can use the new HFA spreadsheet if you want, though you don't have to. Some programs have seen it and feel like it's really helpful, and they've decided they want to continue using it. If your supervisors look in the family files regularly enough that they can sign off on the fact that there were 2 ASQs done in each year, that can be considered monitoring. And so as long as your supervisors are doing that and they're looking in the files during supervision and they're signing off on that data collection or the data tracking form that, yep, they did ASQ, or hey, I noticed that this kiddo was about to turn 1 and they haven't had an their second ASQ, when they're monitoring that, then that is considered monitoring, and that's fine too. So both of those will work as ways for your site to monitor the ASQs are happening. And then the other thing that we learned along this process is that the standard is not that children receive 2 ASQs in a calendar or a fiscal year. It is that children are receiving 2 ASQs within each year of their life. So it's going to be different for every single child unless they happen to have the same birthday, right? So for little Susie, did she have 2 ASQs between her date of birth and when she turned on her first birthday, when she turned 1? So I've talked to HFA about this and said, well, the tool says, the ASQ tool says that home visitors have 30 days really on the front or the back end of a birthday, or if it's a 6-month ASQ, you can do it between 5 months and 7 months, right? You have a month between. And so if we're looking at the first year of life, if a home visitor did, let's say, a 6-month ASQ, and then they did a 12-month ASQ, and those are the only ASQs done in that first year of life. But the 12-month ASQ happened after the child's birthday because the tool says you can do it that way. Does that count? And HFA said no. It does not count. That would be found as the child did not have 2 ASQs within their first year of life. HFA also gave me the guidance. That's a really good reason not to use the 12-month ASQ as your second ASQ for the year for that child. So really, what I hope that you all can take away from this is having this conversation with your team around making sure that every child is having 2 ASQs within each year of their life. So for their second year of life, they still need to have 2 ASQs. That if you're doing, if you've already done 2 in the first year of life, the second year of life will probably be 12-month ASQ if done after the birthday, and then the 18-month ASQ. Could also be the 18-month ASQ and the 24-month ASQ, as long as the 24-month ASQ is done before the birthday, the 2-year birthday. There's obviously other incremental ASQs that can be done in between there, but those are the ones that are done typically the most. So just a little piece of information there that kind of changes how your home visitors might approach when they're doing some of these ASQs. If you want more information on this, excuse me, I'm happy to schedule a call, talk more about it. I can write that out if that's helpful. So I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's any questions before I move on, because for some people that might be a shift in how you talk about ASQs with your team, or maybe it's not. But I felt like that was important enough to share and make sure everyone was on the same page about it. Okay, I don't see any questions. So I'm going to move on. Okay. Whoops, sorry. And then the last update, I just wanted to review a few things about the aligned quality assurance calendar, and then discuss a possible change. So staff satisfaction exit survey, I wanted to remind you all that we're no longer doing paper exit surveys for staff that leave Healthy Families. We are doing an online Survey Monkey. So when you submit your staff exit form to Linda Jones, there's a new spot on there on the revised form that asks for an email address for that staff person. It can be their work email if they aren't leaving for a couple of weeks. You've submitted the form early. It can be a personal email if you're submitting the form and they've already left employment. But Linda then sends the link to the Survey Monkey directly to that staff person who's leaving so that we can try and collect exit survey information, staff information on people who've left. So we will, the staff satisfaction analysis and plan is not due until November of 2019. So next summer, we'll pull that data. We changed some of the language on the staff survey. It used to say confidential, which meant we couldn't share it back with you all, which seems kind of, it seems ridiculous to be doing staff exit surveys if we can't share the information back with you. So, but it said confidential, which meant we couldn't. So now it has changed to anonymous, which means we will share with you the information. We just won't share with you specifically who provided it. But we'll share that information with sites next August. Your staff satisfaction plan and analysis is not due until November. If you feel like you need it sooner than that, please let me know. But make sure and send in those email addresses if staff leaves so we can send them the survey. And the next bullet here is just a reminder. I had sent out an email a bit ago saying that we are going to switch the home visit completion and the screening analysis and plan due dates. So normally your screening analysis and plan would be due in June. And it is going to, we are going to move that to August because we don't have we won't have the status report out yet. And so we are going to have the home visit completion analysis and plan due in June because you have that data at your fingertips with your HVC spreadsheets. So that's just a reminder. We'd already made that adjustment. And then the next is just a proposal, I suppose. Again, the 2-year family retention analysis is due in June. However, we won't have the data from the status report until the end of June, which does not provide you guys enough time to complete it, take it to the advisory committee, do a really thorough and thoughtful approach, getting feed, all those things we just kind of talked about with your advisory committee. But you could do your family file checklists and we could move the family retention analysis to September if that feels more supportive to you all. I know it's kind of a lot of switching around, but it doesn't make sense to have something due or to adjust the due date of the family retention analysis without shifting something else for you. So I'm just gonna take a, why don't we just take raise your hand on your little GoToMeeting thing if you are fine with me switching the retention analysis and the family file checklist due dates. So the family file checklist would be due in June and the family retention analysis would be due in September. I'm seeing a bunch of hands raised. That looks good. If you are strongly opposed to this, why don't you type something into the question box for me so that I can see that. All right, I'm not seeing any opposition to doing this shift, so I will go ahead and make that change. And re-upload a new QA calendar onto Dropbox for y'all with those changes. Okay. I wanted to give an update on the conference, just review some of the logistics of it, and then have this in writing for you all if you need it. So again, the program manager assistants, and supervisor conference is going to be June 3rd through the 7th. I say the 3rd, it's a Sunday. We usually have a welcome session for program managers that night. The actual conference, it's full day conference, will start on Monday the 4th. This is the same kind of structure agenda we've had in the last couple of years. So program managers and program manager assistants will arrive on the 3rd. We'll have an evening welcome session. It'll just be those two groups on Monday the 4th. Supervisors can arrive Monday afternoon. We are not going to do a Monday afternoon packet pickup like we did last year. We're just going to have packets available Tuesday morning to pick up when you come into the conference center. We will have a handout or some sort of piece of paper for you when you check into your room, like in the lobby, that they'll hand you, that kind of shows you where the conference center is, so you know how to get there. And I'll send you kind of our start time for that Tuesday morning ahead of time, so you'll know. We'll also include that on the piece of paper that you get at check-in, so you'll know where to go and when for that Tuesday morning. A change from last year is any cancellations made to your reservations after May 20th will be charged to your site specifically. Last year, we had a lot of cancellations, or room changes are fine, as far as like if you have a staff person leave and you've hired someone new and you just need to swap out the names on those rooms, that's totally fine. That can happen up until the day of the event, and that's fine. But if someone says, oh, I can't make it anymore, and there's no one to replace that room with, then the fee for canceling that will be charged to your program. Last year we paid well over $1,000 in fees for room cancellations or changes that were last minute that we had to pay for. And so trying to eliminate that happening, really make sure that the people that are coming, that are registering, know for sure that they can come. If you do have to make a cancellation, it's always worth, email me and let me know, because there might be another program who needs to add one person, and maybe we can fill that room with someone from a different site, and that's fine too. So just be aware of that. And then here's the link. If you haven't registered yet, I also did send out a reminder sometime last week, I believe. But this is the link to register. You'll put in kind of your arrival date, your departure date, and then there's questions around any allergies and food preferences and things like that. So go ahead and register if you haven't. And I'm hoping to get a report out to you all soon with who has registered from each site, so you can double check to make sure that your team is registered. I'm going to pause for a second. It looks like I might have some questions. Okay, I'm going to move on. There were some comments, no questions though. Okay, so this is an exciting update. Celebration at the conference and at your site. So the Tuesday night of the conference, we're going to have a reaccreditation celebration. We should have our official notice by then. We're going to have some yummy desserts and some music and some speakers and some prizes, and we're going to have a fun celebration Tuesday night. And when our Central admin team met a couple months ago to start talking about this, we had talked about how it seemed, just didn't seem right to have a celebration for reaccreditation without our home visitors. But we can't afford to bring all of our home visitors, nor do we have the staff capacity to plan an event that brings together all of our home visitors all together at the same time. And so we kind of tossed around some ideas of how we could do this, and we talked about it a little bit. It didn't really go anywhere. We tossed around some ideas, but nothing that felt like it was really substantial enough. And then I received some input from one of your co-program managers that I value so much when you guys provide me your feelings on things. And really this feedback kind of echoed what we had already talked about in our central admin meeting, that it really just didn't feel right to be celebrating reaccreditation without our home visitors. So I proposed an idea to my supervisor around taking a very small amount of some flexible funding that we have. Well, it's not that flexible, but around and putting it towards technically staff retention and home visitor appreciation. The intent of these funds would be for you all to celebrate reaccreditation with your team in whatever way you feel would help your home visitors feel the most appreciated. So you will see from me soon in an email kind of an explanation of this and a quick 2-question application that you will need to fill out and tell us how you would like to use this small amount of funding to celebrate your team and have a really kind of focused around it'll be framed up as support to small grants to support team building and staff appreciation and also celebrating reaccreditation. So I would ask that you please take a team picture. I would love to collect team pictures before our conference in June and then use them in the slideshow during our Tuesday night celebration. And then if you think it would be something, if you think that you would want like a congratulations and thank you type video for me to play at this event or to utilize, if you feel like that would be welcomed or that your team would like that, I'm happy to do it. I don't know, it won't hurt my feelings if you guys say no. I just wanted to offer that, but I don't want to do it if people feel like it wouldn't be appreciated or used. So let me know if that's something you would want to incorporate into your celebration. You can do it from me and our whole central admin team. That would be fun. And I'm going to pause there and there's some hands raised and some questions, looks like. So just 1 second. A video would be great. Okay, love this idea. How much money are we talking about? So we are going to do $20 a person. So the application will have you tell me how many people are on your HFO team. Obviously, we could go through the contact list, but sometimes that contact list is missing like an admin support person that really supports your team, and you want to include that person. You can't include everybody at your agency if they're not within Healthy Families, but within reason, the people that support your program, we will do, I'm hoping $20 a person. If the number comes in, the total number is much higher than what I'm anticipating, we might lower that a little bit, but I don't foresee it going below $15 a person. So whether that's hosting a home visitor appreciation dinner and you take everyone out to dinner, or whether you go do something fun like bowling or to a movie, or somehow incorporating some staff appreciation and some team building and a celebration for all the work that went into everything that they do and specifically for accreditation. So we will, the good news is that I do not have to amend your contracts to add this money. We're going to do them as mini grants. So as soon as I get it out to you and you return the form back to me, which hopefully that I can get the form out to you today, and then I'll submit the paperwork, and hopefully it won't take more than a couple of weeks to get the little mini grant. And the money will go through EGMS, just like your programs draw down money now. For your larger Healthy Families grant, the money will be able to be drawn down through there as well. So I hope that you and your teams can find this as a token of our appreciation, and it's so important to me that your teams feel celebrated and appreciated for all the work that they do. And they should absolutely be involved in the celebration. And I wish we could bring everyone together for the conference. It's just not feasible for us. So I hope that this is something that your team has fun with, and you guys can kind of meet, and whoever you want to include in how you utilize the funds to celebrate is up to you guys. So all right, I'm going to, unless there's any more questions, you can also email me questions. Someone said thanks. You're welcome. And shoot me an email if you have more questions. After, obviously, you can type them in now too. But if you think of more later, shoot me an email. Okay. Some training updates. As many of you know, we have our Advanced Home Visitor Seminar coming up in May and October, next October. We're really excited to launch that. We're finalizing the agenda and topics, and we're really excited for that. A new training we're going to be offering this year. We're bringing HFA to Oregon to do an implementation training. This is technically not required through the best practice standards for all program managers. Only new program managers who have been hired after January. I would love for all program managers, though, to attend this training. I have heard from people who've been through it that it's really awesome. It's a great training and that it really helped them. If you are a program manager that has gone to this training, you of course don't have to attend this training. You can if you feel like it would benefit you in your job to go through it again, but you're not required to. So stay tuned for more details on that. The dates are set for November 6th through the 8th, and the location is still to be determined. So just stay tuned. We have space for all of our program managers and program manager assistants to attend. And then there'll be an additional 15 slots for non-Oregon program managers that HFA would like to open that up to other kind of Midwest, West Coast program managers to come to the training. So it might also be a great opportunity to network with other people from outside of Oregon as well. And then we're also looking at, we're going to be hosting an HFA peer reviewer training in Oregon this year. And priority will be given to any program managers, program manager assistants, and supervisors who've, one, have not yet attended, and two, want to actually become peer reviewers and like to go on national peer reviews, site visits. So I don't think that those priority slots will fill the training, and so we'll still have space, I imagine, for people who would like to go through the training and haven't, but don't actually want to be peer reviewers. Just know that priority will be given to those who do. And the date and locations for those are not known yet, so stay tuned for that information. I know that we had this peer reviewer training for program managers specifically a couple of years ago. You're not by any means required to go through it again. It is really for anyone who hasn't been through it that wants to go through it. And open up to supervisors. A training we hosted before was not available to supervisors. There is a question. I am going to pause for a second. Is there any flexibility on implementation training dates to prevent winter travel? What costs will be covered? Yeah, so they actually proposed dates that were later in the year for this training, and I said no, specifically for winter travel. And this was the earliest that they felt they could come to Oregon. So I am happy to see if they have something sooner, but I had already asked for sooner dates, and they had said this was the soonest they could do. We will cover the cost of hotel for Oregon attendees, but not travel or per diem, not travel to get there or back or per diem, but we will cover hotel costs. And food and all that will be on your own. Okay, I am going to continue on. I don't see any other questions coming in. The very last line here is an update that I had already said earlier about reaccreditation. Please update your staff information in HFAST and shoot me an email when you're done so that I know that's done. And that is the last set of updates I have. Are there any questions or comments or anything else we'd like to go over today? I appreciate your patience as I navigated questions and comments and hand raises and the slides together. Normally we have 2 people to do both. Any updates on the database? I do not have any updates at this time other than we have a lot of work happening around identifying requirements and the functionality so that once the major pieces of the work is ready to go, we can start on that. I've said this a number of times, so I'm happy to say it again for anyone new who might be on the phone, that the work on the database is broken out into 2 phases. And so one, I'll start by saying it has been a very long process getting to where we're at now. We have a complete scope of work and a contract in the vendor's hand. We are waiting for them to sign it and send it back. And once that happens, we will be able to begin phase 1. And phase 1 of the work is looking at all of the functionality that's in the data system that has already been built for the Theo data system, which is the data system built with MCV funding. Their system is very functional. It has a lot of really great features. They have not rolled it out publicly yet to sites because they're still testing every piece to make sure the whole thing works perfectly before they roll it out. I have a different approach. We need something now, and we need something that's better than what we're doing now, which is nothing at this point other than a few little spreadsheets left. So our phase 1 is that we will walk through their system and identify all of the functionality in there that meets our needs and what doesn't meet our. So they might have a drop-down list for program selection, and I need to tailor it to meet our program names, or there might be drop-down lists and little workflow things that change, but generally the functionality is there, and so then we'll be able to roll that out. Then phase 2 is identifying through that process what functionality do we need that they don't have in there, and then we'll work on building that out. So the good news is that once this contract is signed, the work to get the current functionality where we need it, we have been quoted about a 6-month process, which that might sound long, but given where we've been, that's not that long. Now, I'm not promising that time frame because I've learned not to promise any dates anymore, especially around the data system, but that is the estimated timeline. So we will just continue to be patient while stern about the need for this, and I'm hopeful that we have a signed contract in the next week or so from them, and then we'll get that work started. So I know it's been very frustrating. It's been frustrating on our end and your end, and so I appreciate your patience around this. Let's see, another comment came in, just making sure I heard right. Supervisors who want to become a peer reviewer are invited to the peer reviewer training. Yes, they I'll send out an email once we have dates and locations set. I will put out an invitation for, yes, supervisors, program managers, and program manager assistants who actually want to be a peer reviewer for HFA. And any other supervisors can also tell me that they'd like to come to the peer reviewer training, but priority will be given to those staff that want to be peer reviewers. So if we have, slots for 20 people and we get 30 people who say they want to come, the people who actually want to be peer reviewers will get priority slots to attend the training. I hope that was clear. All right, are there any more? I don't see any more comments or questions. All right, that is all I have for today. Thanks for joining. For those of you who shared struggles and successes with your advisory committee, thank you for sharing. If you have more comments or questions you'd like to add later, Basecamp is a great place for those to continue the conversation. All right, everybody, happy Wednesday and have a great rest of your week. Okay, bye.